I don't remember much about what happened after that. I only remember that Samuel signed the contract with bloodshot eyes that he said to me, "I'll forever hold a grudge until one of us dies, Kristen." After that night, he threw himself into his career with a vengeance. In just a few short years, his fledgling company went public. Furthermore, his company grew to become the industry leader just last year, that he pulled through and made his way to the top of the pyramid. And I became the greatest stain that ever marred his life. I, of course, didn't show up within the 3-day deadline he gave me. Samuel returned once more to the gate of my humble abode. Toby circled Samuel excitedly. He slipped his tiny, transparent hand into Samuel's hand that was hanging at his side, that he turned back joyfully and shouted to me, "Mommy, I'm finally holding Daddy's hand." My eyes stung, and I looked back at him with a forced smile. Over the years, Samuel had always believed that Toby was Daniel's child. He loathed him and refused to even spare him a glance. Although I had done a paternity test that confirmed they were biologically father and son, he still refused to believe it. He vehemently claimed I had paid someone to fake the results. After that terrible night, I had lost all his trust. That I had asked him for a divorce, wanting to put an end to our toxic relationship. But he only glared at me with venom in his eyes and spat. "Kristen, I want you to remember this. You owe me one for the rest of your life. I told you that this grudge won't end until one of us dies. As for divorce, don't even think about it." He brought countless women home to spend the night and flaunt his intimacy with them in front of me. Whenever I argued with him, he would sneer and remind me how dirty I was when I slept with Daniel. This went on until Violet returned to the country. From the moment she came back into his life, he cut off all contact with those other women. Subsequently, the two of them flaunted their relationship openly. Even his business partners referred to Violet as Mrs. Hoffman. My thoughts drifted back to the present. That I watched as Samuel stood at the gate and called me. The monotonous voice on the other end informed him that the number was no longer in service. That he frowned and opened our WhatsApp chat. The only thing he saw was the last message he had sent me 3 days ago, urging me to come forward to provide my bone marrow to Violet. That I hadn't replied, of course. Samuel turned to Facebook next. When he saw a photo I had posted 4 years ago, his hand froze for a moment. It was a photo I had secretly taken. He was sitting on the couch, with 2-year-old Toby clinging to his arm and resting his adorable little head on his shoulder. That I had thought it was a beautiful moment, so I snapped a photo. But in the next second, Samuel had pushed Toby away in disgust. That he enlarged the photo and stared at it for a long time before returning to the chat window. Then he typed a message. "Kristen, you brought this on yourself. The 3-day deadline is up. Starting today, I won't send you a single cent for your living expenses." After waiting for a reply and getting none, he kicked the gate hard in frustration. Toby, who had been happily holding on to Samuel and running in circles around him, was terrified by the sudden aggression. He quivered and burst into tears as he ran into my arms. "Mommy, what's wrong with Daddy? I'm scared." I held him tightly and comforted him. "Don't be scared, Toby. Daddy can't hurt you anymore. Look, there are butterflies over there. Do you want to go play with them?" I said that to distract him. Toby turned his head and saw a few butterflies fluttering in the distance. His tears stopped, and he quickly wiped his face before running after the butterflies with a smile. Meanwhile, Samuel only grew more agitated after kicking the gate twice. That he rubbed his temples repeatedly. Then he took out his phone and made a call. "Hello, is this the locksmith?" Half an hour later, Samuel pushed open the gate, which was already covered in cobwebs. The weeds in the courtyard had grown even taller than the grass by the gate. They reached up to his waist. That it was clear that this place had been uninhabited for a long time. Samuel stood in the courtyard, hesitating whether to take another step forward. That he had been here twice before, and he should have remembered that I kept the yard in excellent condition. It didn't look anything like this when he visited in the past. The first time he came here was to drop off Toby and me. Back then, 2-year-old Toby had just been diagnosed with uremia caused by underdevelopment of his kidneys. That he thought Toby was a jinx and bought this farmhouse in a remote village for us to move into. Every month, he transferred me $20,000. which included the fees for Toby's dialysis treatment. The second time he came was to force me to go and do the HLA typing to see if my bone marrow was compatible with Violet's. If his memory didn't fail him, he should recall that the yard was once filled with hydrangeas and roses. I had even built a swing there for Toby. While Samuel was still lost in thought, Violet called again. Her voice sounded weak over the phone. Sam, have you found Kristen yet? Will she come and donate her bone marrow to me today? Samuel reassured her. I'll handle this. Just focus on cooperating with the doctors for your treatment. Don't worry. Violet's voice broke slightly. I know Kristen must be unwilling to donate her bone marrow for me again. And I can understand. She already saved me once. I shouldn't be greedy and ask her to save me a second time. If she's hiding now, I don't blame her. It was as if she knew for a fact that I was intentionally hiding because I didn't want to donate my bone marrow to her. Samuel was silent for a few seconds. To my surprise, he didn't immediately side with Violet. Instead, he said, That's not it. I haven't managed to contact her yet. She probably doesn't even know that your leukemia has relapsed. How could she have known about that in advance and decided to hide? Violet was momentarily at a loss for words. She quickly clarified, Sam, you misunderstood me. That's not what I meant. Samuel cut her off. Don't worry, Vivi. As long as Kristen is still alive, I'll find her. And if she's on the brink of death, I'll make sure she donates her bone marrow to you before she takes her last breath. Violet seemed relieved after hearing this. After hanging up, Samuel stood in front of the house for a long time. Even though the door wasn't locked, he didn't push it open and go inside. If he had, he would have seen the two figures outlined in white chalk. Those were the markings left by the police after they discovered our dead bodies in the house. Samuel just stood there. In the end, he stepped back out of the yard and bought a new lock from the locksmith. Then he locked the gate. I noticed something strange. As long as we followed Samuel, we could leave the place that had bound us for so long. Toby had grown tired of being at the farmhouse after 3 years. So, I thought it was a good thing that we could venture out and see the outside world. Of course, Toby was thrilled. He constantly looked around and exclaimed in awe at everything he saw. However, it seemed we couldn't stray too far from Samuel. We followed him back to his villa. Toby stared at the luxuriously decorated villa with his mouth agape in astonishment. He had lived here before up until he was 2 years old. Perhaps he was too young to remember it, that he flitted around excitedly while exploring every corner. Meanwhile, I drifted behind Samuel and followed him as he went into his study. I watched him make a call to the bank and freeze the bank account tied to the card he had given me. If he had paid closer attention, he might have realized that he hadn't received any transaction notifications for that card in the past 3 years. The money he had been transferring to that account throughout that time had never been touched either. He believed that by freezing the account, I would have no choice but to show up within a week. After all, Toby's uremia required constant dialysis until a kidney transplant was possible. A dialysis treatment was needed twice a week, so he was sure I couldn't survive without money. When that was done, he opened his phone's photo gallery and stared at it, lost in thought. I floated behind him and saw that he was looking at the photo I had posted on Facebook, the one of him and Toby together. The resemblance between them was uncanny. His eyes trailed from their broad foreheads to their lush lashes, slightly upturned eyes, and identical eyebrows. Every feature seemed to shout the truth of their shared bloodline, that he wasn't stupid. He could see it. A sudden phone call broke the silence in the study. It was from the hospital. Violet had suddenly fallen into a coma. Samuel grabbed his car keys and rushed out. Toby and I were forced to follow him to the hospital. In his hurried dash, Samuel collided with a man in the hospital lobby, who was dressed in an expensive tailored suit. I recognized him. It was Daniel. Daniel stumbled back 2 steps. Once he steadied himself and saw it was Samuel, his face showed a hint of surprise. He jeered. Well, if it isn't the man of the hour in Southton, Mr. Samuel Hoffman? What brings you to the hospital so late at night? What's the hurry? Samuel muttered an apology hastily before bypassing him and running straight to the elevator. Daniel, however, was relentless. He followed Samuel at a brisk pace. He trailed him all the way to the inpatient department of the hematology ward. When they reached Violet's room, she wasn't there. Samuel immediately rushed to her attending physician's office. Upon learning that she was in the observation room and hadn't fallen into a coma, but had simply fainted due to anemia, Samuel finally breathed a sigh of relief that he sat in the chair by her bedside while breathing heavily. His gaze was hollow as he stared at the floor. It was evident how worried he was about Violet. While leaning casually against the doorframe, Daniel asked nosily, "I thought your sweetheart was cured of her illness. What's she doing back here?" Samuel didn't feel like talking to him. He replied tersely, "It relapsed." Over the years, Samuel and Gloria's group maintained steady business collaborations. Their deals gradually increased in volume and scope. 3 years ago, Daniel's father forced him to go abroad, and so, other executives took over his tasks. With Daniel out of the way, Samuel's career flourished even more. "So, who are you planning to sacrifice this time?" Daniel suddenly asked. Samuel glanced at Daniel like he was looking at a fool. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Daniel scrutinized his face as a peculiar smile formed at the corner of his mouth. "You really know how to keep up an act. Sometimes, I can't tell whether you're faking it or not." Samuel's patience had worn thin. With his voice lowered, he said, "If you have something to say it directly. Beating around the bush isn't your style." Daniel replied, "What I mean is Kristen is already dead. So, whose bone marrow are you planning to use to save your sweetheart this time?"